A special thanks to Catapult for setting us up in their booth to do some podcasts and interact with our audience. In this one, we had a quick sit down with Jeremy Hawkins, the defensive line coach and defensive run game coordinator for Eastern Kentucky. Coach Hawkins has done an excellent job in networking in the profession. He does a lot with professional development as well, and he's been on the podcast a few times, so we'll link those in the show notes. Also, this is part of our Game Plan for Your Next Job series, which now is 14 episodes. Some of those are older and may not show in the feed of your Apple or Spotify app, but if you use the link in the show notes, you'll be able to get to those. So here's our quick sit down with Jeremy Hawkins at AFCA. Our next guest at AFCA is Jeremy Hawkins, defensive line coach, run game coordinator for Eastern Kentucky, a guy who I love to have on the podcast every year. So we're catching up here live at AFCA. You gave your talk here, went really well. But today we're going to focus a little bit on this event and maybe some do's and don'ts of networking. So first of all, thanks for taking the time. Great to see you here.
Man, great to see you too. I appreciate you having me on again. Always a pleasure to be on your podcast. Appreciative of that. So yeah, I'm excited about it, man. We had a good time last night in the Buzz Talk, so it went well. Standing room only. Hot as I don't know what in there with the room full, but we had a good time, man. A lot of good networking, a lot of good ball talk.
Yeah, and that's something that's been big for you here. I think you've done a great job with, the networking side and some of the things you've done to take advantage of that with your Twitter Spaces,
right.
Other things you've done with guys. There's certainly some best practices in networking, and I think some pointers you give out to young coaches, especially those guys who are attending things like the AFCA here this offseason.
Right. It's for me, and my first one was about 8 years ago now, and I was dressed to the T, full suit on, resume in hand, cards galore. I had everything you could think of. I was posting notes of my resume and card on the boards. It was just a little bit overdone. Be casual, be comfortable. These guys are human beings. Those Power 5 coaches, those, CFL, NFL coaches, whatever your desire is, they're human beings. They eat, sleep, and do everything that you do. So be natural. When you network and when you go talk to those guys, they usually want to have a normal conversation. They don't want to be pressed about getting your resume. They don't want to be pressed about taking your card. Try to build a genuine relationship with those guys. Try to actually go to them and shake their hand and talk to them about normal stuff, other than football sometimes. That's what they want to hear, and you build that genuine relationship with them. Then maybe later on, once you build that genuine relationship, you can bring up, hey, you think you can help me with this? Or you think you can help me with that? Because we're all here to help each other. We're all getting used in some type of way. But nobody wants to feel used.
Right.
If I go to a coach and he's at a Power 5 school, and the first thing I say to him, hey coach, how you doing? I'm Jeremy Hawkins. Here's my resume, here's my card. I would love to, get an opportunity to be an analyst with you or be your assistant D-line coach. Well, I'm sure a million guys have told him that before, so be genuine, walk around and be yourself. Don't try to be somebody you're not. If you walk around every day with a three-piece suit on, with a pea coat on, with your satchel and your backpack and your resumes in pocket, then you do that. I don't see too many people doing that in regular life, but I get it. First time, maybe your first, second time in here, those guys don't want to deal with that. So just be genuine, be real, and be honest to who you are. Make relationships real. So that's kind of a small little nugget of understanding what you have to do walking around this convention center every time you come here.
Yeah, for sure. You can't expect things right away, instantaneously. I mean, we know any job that opens out there's hundreds of guys who want in on it.
Yes.
And it ain't going to be because you handed in your resume or a card somewhere. It's,
right.
It is because you started building. And just because you went and introduced one time, that doesn't build a relationship. Think about the follow-up.
write a quick email. Coach, met you here. I want to say this. Ask a question. Whatever. I mean, it's almost like our approach to recruiting, right? I mean, we're not right away when we recruit a kid like, hey, come to school here.
Right.
Like, we're not there right away. We need to learn. We need to establish the trust, right?
Correct.
This is the same way in networking too.
Right. And it's huge you say that, because when you establish that relationship with somebody, they open up more to you. You know, when you establish a relationship with let's say you're recruiting a kid, and we always find out who that champion is, the one that has the most influence on that kid's decision. So when you establish that relationship with that champion, then it's nothing you can do that's wrong, because they believe in who you are genuinely as a person, as a man. So I think that's what you got to do when you walk around this convention center and you see all these coaches. You establish who you are as a man first and foremost, who you are as a person, as a husband, as a father. The coaching stuff sometimes a little bit overrated, you know. So one thing that we have to understand is that relationships do matter and they're important. So.
Yes. Yeah, and I think in looking at that, you know, establishing that relationship. I mean, if you're a guy here and you know you want to come and talk to the coach, I think you ought to prepare yourself for that. Know a lot about that coach, so there's something for you to talk to him about.
Right.
Right. I could think of an example. You know, I met the late Stan Parrish, and I knew who he was. My dad always used to talk about him because my dad coached against him, and I have followed Stan forever. And so that first opportunity to meet him was, I know who you are. My dad told me all these stories about you, and you know, I told him a story, and he's like, he finished it. He finished the story, right? But then there was that connection.
Right.
And this is all I was like, meeting anybody, anywhere.
Correct.
Not trying to, you know, get anything out of that person. It's just learning more about them, right? So then you do have something to talk to them about, right? Because you know, you're only going to get so much out of a hello, nice to meet you.
An example on that was recently, well, not recently, probably my first convention. I had a connection with Terry Price, who is now the D-line coach at Texas A&M. He literally just walked over here and shook my hand. He was at my speech last night, my buzz session last night. Terry recruited me out of high school when he was at Auburn. I was going to Auburn for him and Coach Tuberville. Ended up not going to Auburn because Terry left Auburn. But he recruited me out of high school, and my first convention, you know, not really knowing the coaching profession, understanding what they do and how many kids they see and recruit in the years, I'm thinking for sure he's going to remember me, right? He recruited me. I went on a visit to Auburn. I, you know, went to a camp there. I rode around on his cart, and we talked great. At that time, I'm like, hey, coach, how you doing? I'm Jeremy Hawkins. Remember you recruited me? And I can see in his face, it's like, okay, it didn't quite register just then, but last night it was full circle. Last night was full circle. I was able to mention, hey, Coach Price, how you doing? You know, thankful that I was able to be recruited by you. And he just came over here and shook my hand right before I got on air here. And man, and it's like you said, have some type of tool, have some type of connection with that individual before you go up to him. Don't just think he knows you because he recruited you back in 10 years ago. You know, heck, I got, you know, guys that come up with me now that I recruited 10 years ago, and it's hard to remember everybody.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, and you change. So it was a beautiful thing to see that come full circle. And now he knows who I am. I know who he is for sure. And, you know, it's just in due time. But you got to make sure you prepare yourself for that, though. Like you said, have some type of connection ready. Yeah. So when you go talk to him, you're locked in and you're loaded.
And work on it. Continue to work on
That's
those
it.
things. Touch base.
That's it.
Doesn't have to be good, you know, big deals all the time, but you want to keep those connections and develop those relationships with people. And you know, it's not about take from them, right? What can you do for me? You know,
right.
Find out how you might be able to help. And you know, if you're a high school coach, helping them with a recruit, whatever it might be. There's lots of ways to do it, but there's much more than goes into it. And as you said, you don't walk around in life doing that. Don't come here and do it too. I think that's great advice.
No doubt.
Well, it's great to catch up with you here, Jeremy, as always. And we'll certainly spend some more time with you on the podcast here in this off season.
No doubt.
Talk and get into some other topics here on D-Line Play.
Right. Thank you. I appreciate you having me on, man. It was great to see you. Great to meet you again, and great to be in the presence of a bunch of great coaches, man. And man, with no better place to do this at, man. I love how you got this going. This is beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you.
No doubt.
Thank you again to Catapult for allowing us to have some space and sit down and do podcasts at AFCA. Be sure to check out all their solution-based products at catapultsports.com. Follow all we're doing at coachingcoordinator.com and follow me on Twitter at Coach K. Grabowski.